All right, good evening. We're going to go ahead and jump in. Thank you all for joining us this evening for APSE's Wednesday webinar series, The Missing Middle, which will focus on aging with lifelong disabilities in early and middle adulthood. My name is Ashley Giles, and I'm the advocate for the aging for Henrico County, and I've been a member of APSE, the Area Planning and Services Committee on Aging with Lifelong Disabilities, for nearly 10 years. APSE is a coalition committed to bridging the gap between disability and aging networks, ensuring that adults with lifelong disabilities can age with dignity, independence, and access to effective supports. We work to identify service needs and gaps, raise public awareness about the needs of those aging with lifelong disabilities, offer cross-training for professionals, and plan for emerging issues in aging with lifelong disabilities. If you would like to learn more about APSE, we encourage you to drop your email address in the chat, and we'll send you information about our upcoming meetings and other events in the future. This evening, we will be exploring the topic of supported decision-making. Supported decision-making centers on ensuring individuals can make their own choices while receiving the support they need without giving up their rights. Here in Virginia, it's also recognized as an important alternative to more restrictive options, such as guardianship. We're excited to learn more about this together this evening. Our speaker is Sara Thompson. Sara's with DBHDS, where she is the Supported Decision-Making Community Resource Consultant for the state of Virginia. She has over 18 years of professional experience working with children and adults in the areas of mental health and developmental disabilities. Before joining DBHDS, Sara worked in the Developmental Services Division of a local community services board. Sara's passion for helping others was fostered at a young age through her volunteer work in her community, as well in other states and countries. Sara is a Charting the Life course ambassador and a person-centered thinking trainer. Her goal is to help everyone live the life they want through the use of person-centered practices. Sara hopes for everyone to understand that we all need support, not just people with disabilities, and she's excited to be able to use her passion for person-centered practices and advocacy at the state level to help identify and resolve barriers to more inclusive living for individuals with developmental disabilities. We do ask if you have any questions, please drop those in the chat for Sara, and we'll do some Q&A at the end of this session. But Sara, thank you so much for being with us, and we're excited to learn more.
Thank you so much, Ashley, and thank you, APSE, for inviting me this evening and to be a part of this webinar series. Again, my name is Sara Thompson, and I am the Supported Decision-Making Community Resource Consultant Lead at the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. And I have the privilege to get to spend my time going around Virginia and sharing about supported decision-making and least restrictive alternatives to guardianship with anyone and everyone in Virginia who is open to talking with me about it. So tonight we are going to look at empowering choices and really providing that overview of supported decision-making in Virginia.
As soon as I find a lid for this, Nate, I'm going upstairs.
So I have that little graphic change because I had my own aha moment several months ago talking with actually with my director about supported decision making and about person-centered practices. And we had a long discussion about how, and when we think about person-centeredness or person-centered practices and this idea of supported decision-making, sometimes people think of the person being at the center. So kind of like that first graphic that you might have seen. But really, when we are talking about person-centered practices and supported decision-making, what we really are talking about is the person being the leader, the person being at the forefront of everything and guiding and leading the people that are helping them so that that person is really the one driving the direction of the life that they want. So you're going to see this graphic several times throughout just because it's one that I think really embodies this idea of supported decision-making. So tonight we will talk about the difference between supported decision-making and substitute decision-making. We'll also look at choices or decisions and how that plays in with self-determination. Then we'll look at supported decision-making in practice, some supported decision-making agreement documents from Virginia. We'll talk a little bit about the benefits and risks of supported decision-making and supported decision-making agreements. Then I have some frequently asked questions and answers that I've received, and we will also have time for your questions at the end. As Ashley said, please feel free to put your questions in the chat as we go, because if you're like me, you might have a question in the moment, and by the time it gets to that question time at the end, you will have forgotten. So feel free to put it in chat. We'll go back in at the end and kind of scroll through and make sure we get answers to everything. Also, I know I'm a fast talker, and there's a lot of information that I've got covering, or that I'm going to cover in tonight's session. So if I am getting a little too fast paced, please feel free to put that in chat, and hopefully Ashley will unmute and flag me down and say, hey, slow down, Sarah, because one, I can be fast talking, and especially when it's something that I'm really passionate and care a lot about, I can kind of get in that mode too. So the first thing, though, we are going to do is put on our own self-reflection hats. And if you want to, you can answer in chat. However, whenever I talk about, group answers and group participation, I always say be mindful of not only of what you're comfortable sharing, but also what other people are comfortable learning about you. So this one you might just leave as a yes or no. Have you ever made a decision that did not turn out well? And I'm going to see if I can put up little chat things so that I can see if anybody's putting in chat. I see a few yeses. You might actually have several that come to mind. Pick one, though. For right now, this example, we're going to pick one decision that we've made that maybe didn't turn out that well right now. Okay. So keeping that one in mind, what kind of help could have been beneficial when you were making that decision? And if you're comfortable putting in chat something that might have been helpful. Let's see here. I see someone to weigh my options with. So kind of thinking through different options, slowing down and sitting on it. So having maybe some time to think through before we really committed to a decision. I see parents, maybe that's talking with parents, exploring other options, knowing the outcome before I made the decision. Considering the other party. Yeah. So thinking about the other people that it might impact. Guidance from someone who had a similar experience. Yeah, that's repeated a few times. Yeah, someone with experience in that type of choice. So maybe going to an expert or talking with an expert. Knowing who to call. Yeah. Because sometimes we might have to make a decision and we just aren't even sure who could we go to for support with that. And this person makes a great point. There have been some instances where no matter what anyone said or what I knew, I would have still gone ahead with that decision. And that's fair. We all have that right. But I kind of have a feeling you might have learned something from that kind of decision making. Yep. And that's fair. So I'm going to throw out some other kinds of things. I don't think this was mentioned, but having terminology explained in plain language. I know I've had my own experiences where it might be something medical or legal, and I don't understand those terms. I'm a social worker. I'll put that out there. And so having those terms explained in a way that I understand to help me be able to make a decision can be helpful. Sometimes it's just important to have reminders because maybe there's dates or meetings or appointments that go along with that decision, and we need those reminders. Getting advice from family members or friends. You guys touched on that one. researching, whether it's online or maybe other ways to better understand our options. That was kind of touched on. This one was for sure having that time to think through. Oh yeah, that's a big one for me. Or even making a pros and cons list. That kind of sounded like something somebody had mentioned too, kind of bouncing off on ideas and that kind of thing. So everything that you guys mentioned, including these things, are all forms of supported decision making. So whether you knew it or not, you've already been doing this idea or concept of supported decision making. Now, what if I told you that just because you needed some help with making a decision, or you made that decision and, it didn't really turn out the way that you thought it was going to? What if because of those things, you could no longer vote? You could no longer drive. You could no longer decide if you wanted to be in a romantic relationship with somebody and make other decisions in your life. These are just some of the legal rights that people lose when they enter into things like legal guardianships or conservatorships in Virginia. And it's really important that we all have an understanding of this so that we understand what's really at stake when we're considering different options and different ways to help people or for us to get our own help if we need it. And historically, people with disabilities have not been given that chance to practice this idea of supported decision making and have gone straight into forms of substitute decision making when they become adults. So I'm really hoping that through tonight's training and maybe some additional information if you want it, you guys will really start to think about this and think about how we all make decisions and how we all get help and how this is normal for everyone. So up next, I will say I've got a little video to have us continue thinking about assumptions and the way that we think about people and things that they can do. I will also throw out there that there is a curse word in this video. So if you don't feel comfortable with that, please feel free to mute right now. Otherwise, we will move forward with the video.
Hey bartender, you assume that I cannot drink a margarita, so you don't serve me a margarita? So I don't drink a margarita. Your assumption becomes reality. And parents, you assume that I cannot live on my own, so you don't encourage me to live on my own. So I don't live on my own. Coach, you assume that I cannot hit harder, so you don't train me to hit harder, so I don't hit harder. And teacher, you assume that I cannot learn Shakespeare, so you don't teach me Shakespeare.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
So I don't learn Shakespeare. E-I-E-I-O. But hey, if all your assumptions become reality, then assume that I can drink a margarita. So you serve me a margarita, so I drink a margarita. Assume that I can live on my own, so I live on my own. Assume that I can hit harder, so I hit harder. Assume that I can learn Shakespeare. So, what fools these mortals be! I learned fucking Shakespeare. You assume I can swear, right? Assume that I can do that job, that I can go to parties, that I can have sex, that I can be on stage. Assume that I can. So maybe I will.
So we should always work under the assumption that people can make decisions for themselves. And when we need help, as we all do at times, supported decision-making can be here to provide that support. So hopefully throughout tonight, you guys will learn some more about this idea of supported decision-making and ways that we can all use this to get help when we need it. First thing, we'll just do a few definitions to make sure we're working all at the same level of understanding. So the first definition is supported decision making. And that is a decision-making model in which a person makes decisions with the support of people that they trust. I also will throw in there, sometimes we can use technology, but really with supported decision-making, the purpose of it is ensuring that we have the information we need to make an informed decision for ourselves. Now, the other way that people can sometimes get help is with this idea of substitute decision making. And with substitute decision making, this is a decision making model where a person or sometimes multiple people are appointed to make decisions on behalf of another person who's been determined to not be able to make decisions for themselves. So typically when this happens, this is something where that person then loses their rights to make decisions for themselves, and someone or multiple other people are then the ones legally responsible for making those decisions. When we're talking about decision making, I like people to understand that decision making as a whole is a problem-solving skill. It is something that takes time to develop, and it's something that we actually, as humans, develop throughout our entire lives. We start making decisions as infants before we can even really communicate. So just think about a baby and how sometimes a baby will turn its head towards or away from their mother's chest to indicate that maybe they're hungry or not hungry anymore. Or a baby when they are kind of starting to track and use their eye gaze to indicate choice. And they look at a certain person because that's the person they want attention from. Those are all ways that a baby is then communicating choice. So this idea of choice and decision making is something that has to be fostered and developed throughout our entire lives. It's not something that we turn 18 and we know how to do. So please keep that in mind as we go through this evening. What I have next is a visual example of the different types of formal support with decision making available in Virginia. This is laid out from what we call least restrictive to most restrictive. And when I'm talking about restrictiveness, that's referring to a person's ability to have their legal rights. So when we say least restrictive, we're talking about options where a person keeps all of their legal rights. And when we say most restrictive, that is an option where somebody loses all of their legal rights. So on the screen, least restrictive on the left is going to be supported decision-making agreements, and we move through to most restrictive all the way on the far right, which is full guardianship. Now, when we talked about the idea of supported decision-making versus substitute decision-making, other ways that people can formally do supported decision-making, in addition to supported decision-making agreements, can be through advanced directives and power of attorney, because these are all options where a person is documenting who they want to help them and how they want to get help. But with all of these options, the person keeps their legal rights and keeps the ability to make decisions for themselves when they're able to do so. Then we have substitute decision making, which is going to be our temporary or limited guardianship and full guardianship. And these again are when people, somebody else is appointed to make decisions for someone. And again, they're viewed as being restrictive because that person is going to lose certain or all legal rights. And a few more terms to get through. The next one is decision maker. So decision maker is the person who makes decisions for themselves, and sometimes they might be doing this with the help of trusted people. And then we have supporters. Supporters are a person or multiple people that the decision maker trusts and asks for help when it comes to making decisions or communicating choices, that kind of thing. So you might be thinking, wait, am I a decision maker or a supporter? And I'll tell you, you're likely both. My hope is that you are the decision maker in your own life, but you're likely also a supporter for at least another decision maker, if not more decision makers. So let's talk a little bit about choice or decisions. It's important that people have choice. We have these human rights laws in Virginia and in the country, and the whole goal of these laws is to make sure and to protect people's rights to do things like decide how to spend money, to make their own healthcare decisions, decide where they work or live, and who to spend their time with. Because really, the freedom to make choices is a human right. And choice impacts our quality of life. So think about the decisions you've made or important things that you've done that have really given your life value. What would your current life look like if you hadn't had the opportunity to make those choices? What maybe would you not know about yourself if you didn't have the opportunity to do something and learn from those choices or decisions? When people have choice and have the ability to make choices, it promotes things like greater senses of self-confidence. It helps people with developing self-advocacy skills. It increases community involvement, increases and deepens those healthy relationships, improves health outcomes for people, and increases independence. And we know that choice, in addition to those life experiences, so making choices and then actually getting to act them out, leads to this important piece of self-determination, or this idea of having control over our lives and the direction that we wanted to take. Now, studies have shown that people who have higher degrees of self-determination have better employment outcomes. So they have more competitive employment jobs. They're more likely to be either have independent living skills or live independently. They're better able to recognize and avoid abusive relationships and situations, and they have better outcomes when it comes to their physical and mental health. On the other side of this, people that have lower degrees of self-determination, so people that don't feel like they have as much control in their life and the direction it's going, can have this feeling of learned helplessness, which is a feeling of not having control and not really being able to do anything, relying on other people to do things for us. Again, they've got that loss of control, and sometimes they might feel that this is a personal failure of themselves. They might blame themselves for why they've lost certain rights. And people can also then lose motivation to try new things or to learn new skills. But like we've said already, getting help with making decisions is normal. It's something that we all do. And the fact that we might need help when making a decision does not mean that we cannot make a decision or that we should not have the right to make a decision. When we get help with making decisions, it's something that's going to vary from person to person, and it's going to vary based off of our age, the time in life that we're at, or what's going on when we need to make this decision, and our own experiences leading up to that point. It's also going to vary based off of, things like our own preferences and wishes and values, things that we prioritize. It might also vary based off of the own resources that we have right now. So getting help is normal, but the way that we get help and when we need help is going to always be changing for us, and that's okay. So one important piece that can help with all of this is supported decision-making. As we've already touched on, supported decision-making is a way to increase people's feelings of autonomy and self-determination, and it is something that everyone can use in order to keep our legal rights and reduce the need for things that can restrict those rights, such as things like legal guardianship. Supported decision-making can be done informally, like I think a lot of us are already doing, where we talk with people we trust, we get other people's perspectives, we think through our options, we might even research something online, but we get what we need to make an informed decision. Or supported decision-making can be done in a formal sense, where you formally write down and document the different kinds of decisions you want help with, who's going to help you, and really what that kind of help looks like. And that can be done through a supported decision-making agreement, which we'll talk about more. It can also be done in things like advance directives and power of attorney. And a person can have all three of these if they want to, because they all do different things. Ooh, sorry, I went too far on that one. So when we think about supporters in our lives, these are the people that really can be anybody. There aren't any rules on who can be a supporter. So you might have your natural supporters, people that are maybe family members, friends, even think about extended family members and relatives, your neighbors, people that are parts of groups that you participate in. You know, really, it's people that don't necessarily get paid to provide you with support. On the other side, you might have some people in your life that do get paid to provide you support in one way, but they can also be a supporter with this idea of supported decision making. So thinking about, you know, if you're in school, those teachers or guidance counselors, job coaches, supervisors or coworkers, doctors and lawyers, people that are maybe our case managers or financial planners, advocacy groups, religious organizations. Really, again, anybody in your life can be a supporter. And because we live in a day of technology, distance doesn't matter. As long as the person is open to communicating with you in some form, then they can be a supporter for you. And so don't let physical distance be a barrier. I know I've worked with people on creating supported decision-making agreements where they've had supporters in other parts of the state. I've had people in Virginia have supporters across the country in California, and I've had people that have had supporters in other countries like England. So there's really no limitation at this point. The big thing is, I will say, if you are a supporter or if you are looking for somebody to support you, supporters should in general do these things. They should first know how the decision maker understands and takes in information, because we all learn differently. So because we all learn differently, when information is given to us, it needs to be given in the way that makes sense to us. And a supporter needs to know that so that they're there to make sure that the information they give you makes sense and works for you. Supporters also need to understand how somebody communicates. Not everybody uses spoken words to communicate, but everybody communicates. So making sure that you have an understanding, that you've taken the time to learn how a person communicates, and if somebody needs any type of assistive technology or other forms to support their communication, that those things are there to help the person ensure that they are being able to communicate their choices with people. It might also mean that you as the supporter are that communicator. You might be there as a supporter to interpret or to communicate to others on behalf of the decision maker, and that's okay. I will say, though, when a decision maker asks you for help, though, if it is something that you know nothing about, or because of what your paid role is, might be seen as a conflict of interest. It's really important that you're upfront about that, that you say, hey, I know nothing about this, so let's try to see who else can support you. Or, hey, this is really that conflict of interest. It's not really a good idea for me to help you with these kinds of decisions because of how else I help you. Like, if you receive residential services, your group home manager really shouldn't help you necessarily think about other places to live because that could be seen as a conflict of interest. Because ultimately, the role of that supporter is to make sure that the person has the information they need to make that informed decision. Another thing that we can do is creating this culture of safety to make choices. So when you're helping somebody, when you're supporting them, there's different ways to provide that support with making decisions. We can do things like teaching people, modeling making decisions. Remember, like I said, decision making is a skill. It's got to be developed and fostered. You can use visuals. I'm a huge visual person and I love a pros and cons list, but I really like doing that with somebody else because I can't always think through my options. So having somebody else there to help me brainstorm the different options that I might have, and then I can visually lay it out and see where it falls on that pros cons list is really helpful. Some people prefer talking about options and thinking through those implications. The other thing that's important is to make sure that we allow people to make mistakes and we validate those feelings. Don't say things like, oh, I knew that was going to happen. I told you so. No, that's not helpful. Validation as far as like, oh, yeah, that must really stink. That didn't turn out the way that you thought it was going to. But what can we learn from this and what can we do differently next time? Again, giving opportunities to practice and knowing a person's interests. If you're the person that's helping somebody think through possible choices, keeping in mind what a person likes and what's important to them is really beneficial when you're thinking about those really key options or choices. And now we're going to talk about supported decision-making agreements, which is that formal way of documenting who somebody wants to help them, what parts of life they want help in, and how they want to be helped or supported. In Virginia, supported decision-making agreements are made up of at least 2 people, the decision maker, and at least 1 supporter. We also have this option of a facilitator, but that's not required to have a supported decision-making agreement. Now, to be a decision maker in a supported decision-making agreement in Virginia, right now you have to be at least 18 years old. You have to have a developmental disability, and that includes intellectual disabilities, and you have to be legally able to make decisions on your own, meaning a judge has not said that you are legally incompetent and can't make decisions for yourself. Then we've got those supporters. Like we said, those can be anybody that agrees to do so. And then we have this idea of a facilitator, this option of a facilitator. And this is a person who really their job is to just make sure that supporters are doing what they say they are going to do in the agreement. Now, I will very clearly put it out there that this is not anything that is tied to funding, waiver services, Medicaid benefits, anything like that. Your supporters and the facilitator, if you have one, are all agreeing to provide support in a natural way, meaning they are not getting paid to do this. They are going to be natural supports for you with your supported decision-making agreement. And your supporters and the facilitator need to understand that, you know, they, again, aren't making decisions for you. You have that right. You are making decisions for yourself in the end. Supported decision-making agreements are legally recognized in Virginia. However, they're not legally binding, meaning that supporters cannot get sued for not fulfilling their role per se. And they can't necessarily get in trouble for, say, the final decision that a decision maker makes. That is, unless a supporter is giving bad advice intentionally and is encouraging illegal behavior and illegal decisions, that kind of stuff. That, so if the supporter is being intentionally negligent, then yes, there are consequences to that. But in general, decisions that the decision maker makes, those consequences all fall on the decision maker. So formalizing supported decision making by creating a supported decision making agreement tells other people who it is that you want help from, because sometimes the people that someone assumes you want help from might not be the people that you want to be your supporters. It also lets people know the types of decisions you want help with versus the ones you feel comfortable making on your own, and how you like to be supported. It lets people know that you've got the support you need in order to make an informed decision, and it's a way for people to really recognize and honor a person's rights and autonomy. So you might be wondering, how do I know how someone likes to get helped? How do I know maybe who could be a supporter? Or how do I even ask someone to be a supporter? And how do I know the kinds of things people want support with? We've got tools for that. In Virginia, we've created a number of documents. We've got a template for a supported decision-making agreement. And then we've created what we've called discovery tools, which are really worksheets, if you will, to help you think through those kinds of questions. So on the screen, I just got the first page of the documents. So on the far left, that is the first page of the supported decision-making agreement. Then moving towards the right, we have the first page of a discovery tool called When Do I Want Support? This is a check sheet that goes through common decisions that we have to make as adults. And you can check, this is something I can do on my own. This is something I can do with help or support of somebody. Or this is something that at this time, even with help, I'm not comfortable or I don't have the skills to do. This is a great tool for families to do together to kind of look at skill building. It's something I've had teachers use to look on, to think about skill building skills or skill building outcomes on IEPs. It's things that providers can even use to think about continuing to develop these independent living skills. The third sheet over is the what kind of support do I want? This is another checklist that has common ways people can get help or can ask for help. And you can just check if this is something that you like or don't like. There's also blank spots where you can type in more things that you find helpful. Or for that matter, there's a section to even say, here's things that people do that I don't like, that I don't find helpful. Because sometimes that can be easier to think about. And then all the way on the right, our last sheet is the who do I want to support me? This is also called a relationship map, and it's just a visual way to kind of think about who's in your life, who you feel emotionally connected to and comfortable talking to, and who you might go to ask to be a supporter. These documents all look at different parts of our life because supported decision making can be used throughout parts of our life. So looking at things like healthcare and personal decisions, thinking about decisions around our relationships, money, where you live and things that you do in your community, what you do for a job or volunteering or even educationally, things about your rights. There's a whole host of topics that we discuss in these documents. We've also created some other things to help with this. There's an instructional page. We have some plain language release forms, some tracky forms, and frequently asked questions. And coming this year, we will also be having a simplified version of this template available. So it's going to be much more condensed. I think we're down to about 6 pages. So be on the lookout for that if that is something that you are interested in. So Don't let the length of it turn you off. There's different versions for everyone. We also have some self-advocacy tools. This is a pocket card that was developed with a group of self-advocates that you can kind of keep in your wallet to help tell people sometimes that, hey, I have that right to make decisions, and I also have the right to ask for help when I need to. And that same group, we created a letter because sometimes people just need that extra push to understand a person's rights and a person's right to make decisions and get help. We have some other resource documents that talk about your rights when you turn 18, 6 steps to make a decision by using supported decision making, some documents that help people understand and think about the other ways that we can get help with making decisions, because there's a lot of different ways in Virginia that we can get help. All of these documents are all available on our website. I'm also happy to always send information to people, like those pocket cards. I've got them on thick plastic. If you want one, send me your information and I will mail them to you. So benefits of supported decision making. We've touched on some of these already, but again, ultimately, people keep their rights, and this increases independence and self-determination. It's a way for people to develop skills. It also is a way to avoid really long and expensive legal processes that can be involved with things like guardianship and conservatorship. Supported decision-making agreements can be created, changed, and canceled at any time, free of cost. And they can be used with other forms of decision-making support, like advanced directives and powers of attorney. Now, risk. I know that is the biggest thing. People are always concerned about risk and are concerned about things that could hurt people. And I get that, because nothing in life is free of risk. And really, just by making decisions in themselves, that involves some risks. Even people with legal guardians are still at risk for many things, including abuse and neglect. And we acknowledge that balancing this idea of independence with safety can be a challenge. However, society has its own barriers in place sometimes. So things that can reduce risk, such as laws, regulations, resource limits or requirements, even our own personal beliefs and values create kind of these barriers and protective factors. Additionally, we believe in the right to dignity of risk. And dignity of risk is the belief in self-determination and that we all have the right to take reasonable risks. This is also essential to building that self-esteem. The concept of dignity of risk isn't solely about risk, though. It's about the right to make choices. Making choices means having the right to be able to take risks. And we don't just magically wake up one day or turn 18 and know how to make choices or decisions. Like I said before, this is a life skill that has to be taught and developed. And it really is lifelong and always developing, because every decision we make, we learn from. And people require opportunities to make choices and even to fail. And it's their right to do so. Overprotecting people with disabilities keeps them away from many life situations that they have the right to experience. It may prevent people from experiencing personal connections and leading these fulfilling lives that lead to the hopes and dreams that they desire. Dignity of risk is the right of a person to engage in experiencing things that are meaningful to them and are necessary for their own personal growth and development. And remember, when we provide proper support and education or teaching, this can help reduce risk, and that's really what supported decision-making offers. So failure's not that bad thing. With failure, there's learning and growth can come from that. So when we give people permission to fail, we give people permission to be brave, the opportunity to learn and grow, to build that self-confidence and self-esteem, and to develop independence. Now, supported decision-making can be utilized with these other types of formal support, like I said. And actually, our laws even indicate this. The laws around these different types of formal support in Virginia talk about utilizing this idea of supported decision making in the sense that if you are a person or an agent, the person responsible for making decisions on an advance directive or a power of attorney, you should be making decisions based around what the person's preferences are and based around the way that that person has said they wanted to make decisions. Or if you are the guardian or the conservator, again, you should be making decisions based around the person's personal preferences and values. So supported decision making is important in our lives in all aspects, regardless of who's truly making the decision for us or if we're doing it ourselves. And I'm mindful of time. I'm so sorry. I'm going to go through these frequently asked questions really quickly. So is supported decision making or supported decision making agreement right for me or someone I support? Everyone can use supported decision making. And in Virginia right now, we do have some criteria for being able to utilize a supported decision making agreement. So just keep that in mind. I will say this is not the same requirement in all states. This is just how Virginia has interpreted it at this time. How is a supported decision-making agreement created? I say with time. It is a lot to think through. But find people that you trust, maybe use those discovery tools, break things up into life areas or topics. Talk with people that you trust. Anybody can help someone create a supported decision-making agreement. However, do remember that supporters, and if you have that facilitator, they all need to agree to what's written in your agreement because they will need to sign off on that. If you would like help with this, though, you can contact me. That is one of the very fun things that I get to do is help people through this process and help people with creating their agreements. So please don't hesitate to reach out if that's something you're interested in or have questions about. Do you have to use all of these documents that we've created? And that answer is no. If you want a supported decision-making agreement, you can create your own template. That's just fine. We do ask that you do keep in mind these 4 things. So who the decision maker wants as their supporters, when the decision maker wants help, how they want to get help. So what does that help look like? And that everybody signs and dates the agreement. Do you have to have a supported decision-making agreement? And that answer is no. Everybody has the right to ask for help from anybody that they want to. And you have the right to bring anybody that you want into your appointments and meetings, regardless of whether you have a supported decision-making agreement or not. So keep that in mind. Even if you have a supported decision-making agreement, you can ask other people for help, and that's just fine. You don't have to just stick with your supporters. And remember, there's other ways that you can document this, like your power of attorney or an advance directive. And when should we begin talking about decision-making options? It is certainly never too late and never too early, as we are always growing and developing as humans, and our preferences are always going to be changing. So please continue to have these conversations. Don't think that, hey, we've had this once and end it here. No, please continue to have the conversations because we are always changing. Our preferences, our needs, our wants are always changing as humans, and that's just normal. So what I will leave you with is may your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears by Nelson Mandela. And we will head to some questions. I'll put my contact information up as well, and then I will check the chat. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through chat.
Sarah,
Yes.
if you don't mind, Ben asked, is there a legal burden of proof that a person is capable of making decisions?
Ooh, excellent question. So Ben, that depends. Okay, so we have something in Virginia. We have a law in Virginia about presuming competence. Or actually in Virginia, it's presuming capacity. So we have a law that says that anyone that turns 18 and becomes a legal adult, we presume, so we already make this assumption that they are capable of making informed decisions for themselves unless a judge has said otherwise. And that's also regardless of disability. So a disability alone is not reason to question that or anything like that. So we should be working under that assumption or presumption that somebody has the ability to make decisions for themselves. Now, if, say, a person has already been determined by a judge through the legal system that they can't make decisions and has been appointed a legal guardian, then there is a requirement or the court will ask you to then provide evidence that you now have the skill or the ability to make decisions. So that's where that comes in. But prior to that, unless a judge says that you can't, we should already be working under the assumption that you can. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I love this. The favorite phrase of presumed competence. Yeah. Yeah, I love that one, Ben. I've got several shirts actually that say that. When I am at like in-person events, I'm usually wearing those. Yeah, I love it. Getting a copy of the slides, yes. I will be sending that. I know Ashley or somebody with APSI will be sharing that with you. I will just 100% admit that I was behind on getting them updated for accessibility purposes. So as soon as I get that finished, I will send it over to APSI so that they can get those sent out to you guys. Oh, okay. I see your question now, Ben, about the legal burden of proof. So when I say a person must be able to make decisions, it's more of the person must legally be able to, meaning that the court or judge has said that has not said that a person legally cannot. That's what that terminology that I mean. Mm-hmm. When will the re-edited shortened version of the supported decision-making agreement be available? I will be honest, I'm not sure yet. It does have to go out for public comment. And there is a other like kind of supplemental documentation guide that I'm working on to go along because there's a lot of information to think about. So when we take a larger document and make it shorter, where else is all that important information going to go? So we've created another document, and that other document is still kind of getting finalized or kind of put together. So I'm really hoping that in the next few months it'll be out for public comment. And then I think it's out for public comment for about 30 days, and then it gets really formally put out there. I will say though, like everything we've done, really, that shortened version was done with a work group of various people in the community. Over 50% of the people that were in the work group were people with lived experience. But I certainly am always happy to get feedback still on things. Yes, I see some requests for the pocket cards. So I'll make sure that I can save those addresses so that I can mail you guys stuff. Yes, Ben also notes that we say supported decision-making agreements are an organic document as people involved may change and the individual's wishes and needs may also. And that is 100% true. Your supporters are likely going to change throughout your life. The things that you want help with are going to change, and the ways that you want help are going to change. So once you have a supported decision-making agreement, it's not something that you put in the drawer and don't revisit. Like, you can continuously revisit, and I hope people do. Same thing, I'm going to throw this out there. If you have a power of attorney or an advance directive, it's good to look at those too. Because the things that you've put in there might be different now than if you did them 5 or 10 years ago or even 1 year ago. So any type of formally written document about your life and the way you want help and those kinds of things, like that should always be revisited because we're living, breathing humans and we're always changing. So, really, things just shouldn't be set in stone forever. Mark asked the phrase, if we give them permission to fail, we give them permission to be brave. Who was that from? Oh, great question. Let me go back and check. It's a psychologist, if I am remembering correctly. Yep, Karen Young. I will put this in the chat for you, Mark. There you go. Can we make an advanced directive template? So there actually is already an advanced directive template. There's a number of different ones. In Virginia, our advanced directive is actually 3 parts, and you can decide which of the 3 you want to do. So there is the medical piece. There is a piece around psychiatric or mental health decisions, and there is an end of life piece. And you can fill out all 3. You can fill out 1 or 2. It's totally up to you. So there are online forms that you can do it through. There's also something in Virginia. I'm gonna mess this name up or this title up now. They're like a well, facilitator is part of it. And don't we love that word, facilitator? But oh goodness, what are they? I'm trying to remember. Like, I don't think it's end of life isn't the right word. But they're doing life planning essentially. It's people that are specially trained, have gone through special trainings to then help people fill out their advanced directives. Um, so it can be helpful to work with people that have done that. It's not required, but it can be helpful because they have certain skills and understanding ways to explain some pretty complex um, questions. So that might be a helpful thing. And in the slides, I will say, like, in addition to the slides, I've got some resources. I'm going to stop sharing actually for this. And I'm going to make note in my resource slides, I'm going to add some information about that piece, that advanced directive, the people that can help you with doing that. So let me just make a note to myself.
And Sarah, these were such great questions, and we still have a couple in the chat, but I encourage you, if you all didn't have your questions answered by Sarah, if you could please reach out to her, make sure you get her contact information. We had such robust conversation. I wish we had left more time for Q&A, Sarah. I'm sorry.
It was my fault. I'm sorry. I was like so incredible. I'm sorry. Like I said, I get on my thing. I'm gonna make sure though I put my contact information in the chat. You all are more than welcome to, I will say email is usually easiest for me because I am in and out of things, but you A lot of times what it ends up doing is I'll email with somebody to schedule time to talk on the phone, if that's okay. It tends to be it. But whatever happens, if you want to call first, totally fine. Sarah.
Great. So we'll make sure everyone gets copies of the slides when they're available. We will be sure to send out a link to our recording. This will be linked to the APSI YouTube channel shortly. So we'll make sure you all have access to that. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you, Sarah, so much. We just appreciate it, and we can feel your passion about this topic, which is great. And we hope that you all can join us next Wednesday, where we will be discussing all needs planning. So next Wednesday, same time, same place. We hope you can join us. Thank you.
Thank you all.